After the alleged massive cheatings and fraud in the 2004 and 2007 manual elections, hopes were high when the nation had its first ever automated polls in 2010, using the precinct count optical scan or Pcos machine.
Anyone tries to tamper with any data in the system by just erasing anything on the CF cards, the system shuts down and you immediately will detect that the digital signature was altered.
But doubts started to escalate when the storage cards were recalled, file transmission was slow, and some security features were disabled days before the 2010 election. In the coming midterm polls, things are not seen to be getting better for the Pcos machine. Doubts from election watchdogs continue to hunt Pcos, such as the supposed malicious code embedded in the software.
Smartmatic does not have access to the licensed source code. Smartmatic versus Dominion case, paragraph 12, item 7. Therefore, what source code was deposited in escrow with the BSP?
The Cablelink released a report from an international IT firm, SLI Global Solutions, stating that Pcos can operate properly, securely, and accurately.
Right after the May 2010 elections, I received a report. The report was made in writing, digital signature was mentioned, source code was mentioned, and other alleged violations of the existing law.
But Pcos glitches still bug the recent mock polls itself. Everyone witnessed how the Pcos failed to initialize in spite of correct passcodes. Ballots were rejected, and the poor signal reception hindered the results from being transmitted on time.
I'm glad it happened kasi makikita natin, we can study bakit nagkaganon, bakit nagahang yung machine. But as you can see naman, meron agad replacement.
This is actually the first of a series of so many things that's going to happen. So if you're looking for glitches and deficiencies, there's practically none. If there is any, it is very, very minor.
Despite all the mishaps, Pcos machines are relatively faster, safer, and better than going back to the old manual system.
The 2013 midterm polls are shaping up to be an exciting one. For Ms. Nancy Orlanda, I'm Karen Jimeno. With me is our resident election analyst, former Cablelink Commissioner Attorney Gregorio Larrazabal. Hi, Goyo.
Hi, good evening.
He refuses to be called Commissioner
No,
Goyo, but I think
okay
it's the
na.
proper title. So, for most of us, like voters, we've been hearing Pcos machines, controversies, but just for the benefit of those voters who have no idea what these Pcos machines are, can you explain to us briefly, what are they supposed to do?
The Pcos machine is basically a scanner. In the world of automated elections, there are two types of automated election systems. The DRE, which is the touchscreen, and the OMR, which is an optical mark reader, which is what we have. It's a paper-based system where you still have the ballot, but the ballot is scanned by the machine, and it produces a digital image of both the front and the back of the ballot.
Okay, so this is different from what they have in the United States, where they have the separate booths and they input their votes on the machine directly.
Yeah, that's the DRE, the Direct Record Electronic Voting System, no? But in many counties in the States, they actually use also the OMR, but from a different vendor, because in the world, Smartmatic is not the only vendor. It's a very tough field, and there are vendors from the US and from Europe, and based on these two systems, they try to sell different election systems.
So for Philippine elections, how drastically did the use of Pcos machines change the way we do elections?
It changed the way elections was run in the Philippines, because in previous elections, what happened was 3 or even 4 weeks after, people would still read the papers and the headlines would be who's leading and who's not, diba?
I remember those days because every time I would open the TV, I'd get so impatient. It's always people drawing in blackboards, and of course, when I was younger, it would make me very impatient to see this on TV.
What happened in 2010 was that 2 days after elections, the top presidential candidates who did not make it conceded. That's never happened in history. And a few days after elections, wala na. The headlines would be the economy, which is good because that showed that the country was moving on.
Yes.
It changed the way people viewed elections, and it changed the way people want elections to be run, because I'm sure everybody is tired of the old process that you have to wait how many weeks. Unlike
And I think the problem with the old system was from the time you cast your ballots and it's counted and canvassed, there's the huge risk of cheating, which
Yes.
is what they say yung dagdag bawas. It really happens from the time na nag-vote and yung canvassing. Do you think the use of the Pcos machines reduced that risk drastically as
yes,
well?
it did reduce the risk of that type of fraud, but it did not eliminate all types of fraud.
Okay.
How do I explain this?
Yes.
Vote buying is still fraud. Voter intimidation, disenfranchisement of voters, that's still fraud. The machine, the Pcos, or even if you have a DRE, it's just a tool to make elections run more efficiently. But it's not the
It doesn't solve
it doesn't solve
problem.
everything. You still have to look at the process, you still have to look at the people running the elections and the voters. If you have voters who still sell their votes, there's still going to be fraud.
Yes. But what about risks that are unique to Pcos machines? Like, of course, now here we have something we have the risk of technology. So there's this whole issue about the source code. But in the first place, what is this source code? Why is it so controversial whether there's what the source code is that is placed in escrow with the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas?
In 2010, the source code for that elections was deposited in escrow, the central bank. That was done by Chairman Melo at that time and some officials. I was in Cabuyao when it happened. The source code is basically a human-readable set of instructions of the software. It basically tells you how the system will work, how the software will work, provided if you do this, it will do these steps, etc. I think the controversy now is because of the dispute between Smartmatic and Dominion. Let me explain. The system is actually not the Pcos itself. There's the front end and the back end.
Just like any computer,
Yeah.
you have the hardware and then the program.
Yes, but the program there are two programs here. Basically two. No, there are several, but the basic two softwares are the software that runs the Pcos, the front end, and the software that runs the back end, which is the consolidating and canvassing system.
Yeah.
The back end was developed by Smartmatic TAM, and the front end Smartmatic, and the front end was developed by Dominion. They have an agreement, but there was a dispute between these companies. That's the
But
issue
then
now.
how can anyone really tamper the source code? The source code that is put in each Pcos machines so that they can implement fraud or the candidates can make themselves win.
You mean say if somebody changes the software or
Yes.
manipulates the software, if somebody does that, there is a way to audit it and check it if it was done. There are safety features in the system which will allow you to check if somebody just actually did it.
Okay, I'd like to talk about the glitches that were supposedly discovered. Recently, there were some tests on Pcos machines.
The mock elections.
Yes, and we actually have one
Yes,
here.
there.
I want to test it right now. But what types of glitches were discovered recently?
You know, the premise is the mock elections is there actually to help COMELEC run the elections better. It's supposed to be a dry run, so if you see something wrong, there is still enough time to correct it.
Yes.
And that's what happened during the mock elections.
What were the glitches? I heard that there's no signal. It couldn't get the signal, so they had to push the machine. In some areas, they had to bring the machines out, and the others would reject the ballots that they would put inside the machines.
Yeah, like some ballots would be rejected, but I think it was not as big as it was made to appear. No,
okay.
The transmission, the problema with the transmission. These are things that I think I wouldn't want to say it's expected, but these are things that can happen.
Yes.
What's important is there has to be adequate preparations for the May 13 elections. Meaning to say, for example, if in Misamis Oriental it couldn't transmit, then the providers should already see why it wasn't able to transmit. They have to work with the telcos, and that was basically a regular line, no? But in elections, it will be a private network.
Okay.
So there are things that I don't think it will happen on election day, but the good thing about it is that it showed COMELEC what can be done to improve elections.
Do you think it has anything to do with the machines, the Pcos machines being stored for dormant basically for several years, because it was used last 2010
Yes,
and then it's just been stored since then. Now we're going to use it 2013. Do you think there's a risk that it would malfunction because it hasn't been used like any technology?
Let me start out by saying in other in the US in particular, there are some counties who use the old computers, the scanners with the PCMCA cards. It's very old machines, but it still works, provided they just store it properly. This one, the machines, my understanding is that the machines were tested in Cabuyao. The extent of the testing, I am not too familiar with, but what's important is before the machines will be deployed, they will be tested again. Like you mentioned, machines are machines. It may work, it may not work, but in this case, what's important is you have to take the appropriate steps to make sure that it will work on election day.
That's something we should ask the COMELEC, our Speaker of COMELEC Commissioner guest today, because of course, as voters, we want to make sure that the COMELEC has a backup plan in case any
there are contingencies.
arise.
There are contingencies now. What's important is that the 2010 was a very good election. It was not a perfect election, so I'll be the first one to say that, but it was a first step in the right direction.
Okay.
So what you have to do is you have to continually improve the way elections is run. 2013, if we have a really good elections and even better than 2010, 2016 siguro will be much easier to run.
Yes.
And that's the goal. You have to have it continually improving.
Okay, we'll continue
Yes.
after the break.
Thank you.
After the break, more issues about the Pcos machines. A staunch critic of the Pcos and the spokesperson of COMELEC will join us. Stay tuned. This is Elections 2013. Welcome back. You're still watching Elections 2013. Joining us now is former COMELEC Commissioner Augusto Gus Lagman and the spokesperson of COMELEC, James Jimenez. Hi.
Good evening, guys.
Hi, good evening.
So here we're going to talk about the issues again on the Pcos machines, and of course we're curious. First, in 2010, there was no on-bank resolution that extra CF cards could be distributed.
Okay.
But then they found extra CF cards were actually given to the DOST. So how can we avoid risks like this again happening in this election?
And I think the one in Cagayan, I'll take this video.
Yes, they found that, right?
Yeah.
Can you give us a background of this?
What happened was that it was a hotly contested elections, and it appeared after our investigation that the CF cards were stolen, but conveniently thrown into a
yes, they
dump
found
site.
a bunch of CF cards in a dump site.
That was intended to be discovered that way, to cast doubt on the system. In fact,
okay.
one of the
So you think this is more of a setup, not really
it's politics, eh? And one of the staunchest critics at that time was Representative Rufus Rodriguez, and everything was explained to him. After that, he was satisfied, and that it did not affect the election. It was basically politics. That doesn't, and that doesn't reflect everything, but that particular situation was basically political.
Okay. They tested those CF cards and found that there was no tampering.
None.
Okay. Now, the question would be, there are extra Pcos machines, right? That are being distributed.
There are spare.
And are there any safeguards adopted by the COMELEC to make sure that none of these extra Pcos machines will be either tampered with or used by candidates to win the elections?
Well, first of all, the extra Pcos machines. No? They're basically our standby capacity, so that if you have problems in the field with any machine, then you can replace them quickly. When they're not being used, they're stored in secure warehouses. We don't even tell a lot of people where those warehouses are. Second, the machines themselves are, they're pretty dumb. They're not going to be able to be used by anyone unless they have the proper configuration available to them. The Pcos machines, as you must know, are precinct specific, which means that even if you were to get one, then you'd have to get the precinct information of a whole bunch of precincts before you can use it to any great effect. Otherwise, you're just, you just have a machine. The machine will not be able to do anything that you want it to do unless it is properly configured. So,
and you think there's no risk that anyone can basically get all these information and piece them together?
No, in the realm of possibility, obviously everything is possible, but it's unlikely to happen. Second, in order for that to work, you'd have to cancel the other out. You can't have two machines at the same time talking about the same thing, talking about it differently, but purporting to be coming from the same place. So even then, even if by some freak of nature you were able to get your hands on a Pcos and you were able to make it appear that that was a legit Pcos, a legitimate Pcos operating from a legitimate precinct, there is no way that that would remain undiscovered.
Okay.
And as the point was being made earlier, in a lot of cases, the very evidentness of tampering is itself proof against that.
No, Comelec Commissioner Lagman,
You can call me Gus.
Yeah, sorry, Gus. I saw some of your proposals. You want basically to at least go back to manual on some points of the election. Can you basically walk us through what your counter proposal would be?
Let me just correct some misconceptions. Okay. If dagdag bawas was minimized or eliminated, it's not because of Pcos. It's because the canvassing was automated. Dagdag bawas happens in canvassing, not in precinct counting.
Yes.
Okay? All of the problems that we have today, the controversies, source code review, the digital signature being not being used in 2010, and up to now, I doubt if that's going to be used. All of these problems, Comelec bought the machines, and so now we have a problem of warehousing them.
Yes. So do you think it would have been smarter if they just leased the machines?
Let me finish. Let me finish. I think Comelec is asking for 400 million just to warehouse the machines. Now we have to take care of maintaining all of them, because many of them not being used for 3 years may be down. They have parts that break down very easily. Rubber parts, for example, would become brittle if you don't use them for several years. No? All of these problems, and let me add two more. We're going to spend almost 10 billion, almost 9 billion pesos just for these elections, and 11.3 billion in 2010. And transparency was lost. For what? To save 12 to 24 hours in the entire processing time. That's all.
No,
12 to 24 hours. Well, let me finish. Go ahead. That's all. Now, I'm the IT person. He's a lawyer.
Oh, wait.
And James is...
Wait. I just want are you an IT expert? Are you an IT expert?
I never said I'm an IT expert.
So you're not an IT expert?
But I'm a systems man.
But you're not an IT expert, right? You've never run elections. You've never.
No. Wait, Goyo. I ran the Operation Quick Count of NAFREL from 1984 up to 2004.
Which showed some problems with computing, which could be hacked.
10 elections.
Okay, it's pretty interesting that you're both from Comelec.
Wait a
and
minute.
It's good
Listen
to see
to this,
that there are different views within the
public should know that we're spending 9 billion pesos
but my question
to save 12
is
to
if
24 hours.
Too much of a cost for faster elections and more transparent? I'm curious with your statement when you said we've lost transparency because...
Of course. Did you know, did you vote in 2010?
Yes, I did. And I fed my own ballot inside the Pcos machine.
Did you know whether the Pcos machine counted your vote correctly? You don't.
But then
I
it's
vote.
I think
didn't.
it's
You
the
can
same
audit
doubt
it.
that you
But
have with
I
the
didn't.
manual
But you know what,
canvassing
Karen?
as well.
It's funny because, you know, like for example, the issue with the digital signatures was brought up, and it's being brought up again and again. I've heard that already in 2010. The Supreme Court has already decided that there was digital signatures, and what they're saying is there wasn't. So do you mean to say they are saying that the Supreme Court was wrong?
No. It's in the law.
But that's the
in
one.
the
The
law.
final arbiter of the law is the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said there was digital signatures. Now,
They didn't say that.
they did.
They did not
In
say
fact, in
They
the
did not say
Supreme
that.
Court decision, it was showed that the people who asked for the source code were caught lying. They were caught lying. That they made some allegations to the Supreme Court.
This is one of them was an elections watchdog that asked to investigate the source code, right? And the
But they didn't
Supreme
do
Court
anything.
gave them
Yeah.
guidelines.
The reason
Okay,
it's
you
always-
can
the reason
look at
it's
the
always
source code,
being
but you have
brought
to
up
give your feedback
is
to the
because
Comelec.
Comelec has not done anything to correct, like the digital signatures.
Have they not done
Like the
anything to
source
correct
code.
this,
They haven't done
James?
anything.
That's the
so
fun- I
people
wanna
like
stay away
us
from
keep
them.
on repeating,
Oh,
keep
James
on
wants to stay away
harping
from
on
the
that.
two of you.
But the funny thing is, like, I'll just take it. I'll take it here, James. The funny thing is, the Supreme Court already made a couple of decisions. In fact, the Supreme Court ruled it with finality. If there was a question as to the Supreme Court decision, they should take it up to the Supreme Court. They should ask for an MR. Now, you can say that it does not agree. You know, there are, like lawyers. 10 lawyers might have 10 different opinions.
Can we discuss the more substantial matters?
Yes,
Elections is substantial. Lies, so peddling of lies is not good. So, 10 different lawyers have 10 different opinions, right? But what is key? The Supreme Court says it with finality. If the Supreme Court says this is final, then you're bound to it, right?
Let me explain, Karen.
So far, I think there's
Let me
no
explain
controversy
lang.
with the correctness of the Supreme Court decision. At least so far, it hasn't been correct.
Let's forget
but
about
yes,
that.
my question would be, as an ordinary voter, I'm not the former Comelec commissioner. I'm curious, how do I know that my votes will be secure this coming election?
Let me explain first, for the benefit of the non-ID people, what the election process is, okay? In the old days, during the manual system, voting takes place in 8 hours, 7 o'clock to 3 o'clock. The counting takes 5 to 12 hours.
Is it really just
The
5
present
to 12
counting,
hours?
5 to 12 hours,
Yes,
okay? The canvassing takes 25 to 40 days, okay? Now,
And is
you don't have to be an IT person to
Yes.
know that if you want to automate any of the processes, you address the
where
canvassing.
the cheating usually comes from?
Where the dagdag bawas happens, which is it canvassing. That's the one that takes 25 to 40 days.
But
You know,
Commissioner,
what we are
Commissioner-
saving by using Pcos is 12 to 24 hours. And I
You
can
mean
show.
the actual voting?
Yes.
But Commissioner, I'm curious how you
You know what,
propose the manual voting.
that's too simplified. You know,
You
I can
voted
show you.
manually.
I can
How
show
do
you.
they-
I think James
Yes.
should
I'm
say-
sorry.
Yes.
Ah, sige.
Not to say that you've lost control of this interview, but just I think I agree with Commissioner Larazabal. That is a drastic oversimplification. When you say that the counting happens in about 12 hours, it's not as if it's a 12-hour walk in the park. All right. During those 12 hours, a lot of things happen. Teachers get harassed.
Yes, this
Lawyers.
is exactly what I was going to
Lawyers
ask, like-
try their darndest best to really influence the outcome of the results. Teachers, what Commissioner Lagman also said was right. Dagdag bawas happens in the canvassing, but dagdag bawas, you predispose to dagdag bawas if your initial records are already poorly made. And that's the problem. When your teachers have been up for 12 hours or more, actually closer to 24 hours, because they started preparing at 5 o'clock the day before, on election day. And they're counting all the way until 5 o'clock the following day. So they're tired, they're sleepy, they haven't bathed, you know, they're in a bad frame of mind, most of them, and they have been harassed throughout the night.
I would rather.
How well...
James, James.
How well...
I think James
I know
should
where
finish.
this
Wait,
goes.
how well, let James finish.
How
Let
well
James
will
finish.
they
Let James
prepare?
finish.
We've
How
heard
well
that already.
will they prepare the election returns? The election returns that go into the canvassing are already, as they are, potentially compromised,
Yes.
either by fraud or by fatigue or whatever. It doesn't matter where it's coming from. The end result is still bad. And that's the reason why there is so much uncertainty that dagdag bawas becomes a possible
By
avenue
election
for changing.
returns,
Exactly.
just for the
Yeah.
benefit
I
of the
think
viewers.
Solar
This is
News.
the point where
I think Solar
after-
News should give equal time.
Yes, sir.
To both
That's
sides,
what
right?
we're rotating here, and basically, yes, this was something I also wanted to ask because, of course, ideally, it should take 12 to 24 hours. But we also know, based on experience, there were a lot of times that people
How
who
many?
were doing the
What percentage of the
counting were
230,000 precincts took 24 hours? And let's say it's 24 hours.
Yes.
I would rather give the money to the teachers.
Yes, but Commissioner,
Double
I'm
or
curious.
triple their
I'm
allowances.
curious. We've already gone forward basically in 2010 by automating our elections.
Okay.
How do we go back again to be going to the manual elections? Now, so close. We're already February, March, April, we have 2 months.
Germany moved from automated to manual. Netherlands went back to manual. Ireland went back to manual. And there are counties in the US
fair to compare them parallel?
because it's not transparent.
Yes,
And
but
the
we are not as
the mantra
transparent, I
today
think.
is secret voting, public counting. That's the mantra today. You can check, you can Google that.
Well,
That's the mantra today.
But you know what?
Sir, the mantra today is yoga. Doesn't mean everyone has to do
But
yoga.
you know what? Let me say this. In the world of automated elections, the Philippines is actually the role model on best practices.
Not anymore.
Well, that's what you think, and that's why, because you don't like the system.
Because it's a,
but you know what? Wait, let me
equal
finish.
time.
Yes.
Equal time.
You know what?
Okay.
So that's
Okay,
why the
so
best
as soon as-
practices now are 3 countries. It's the Philippines, Brazil, and India. And I've spoken with several
So
election
basically,
officials.
If
Gus,
COMELEC,
Goyo is saying that
Yeah.
we are actually a model for automated elections.
if
systems.
COMELEC were a private corporation and I were the IT manager and I recommended Pcos spending 9 billion pesos, losing transparency, I would be fired for
But
incompetence.
again,
for
but the question
incompetence.
is that sequitur, or it might be non sequitur that we spent 8
The
to 9
problem
billion
is-
and lost.
You know, the problem is,
Transparency.
COMELEC, even when I was there, I'm the only ID person, but IT issues were being decided by 6 lawyers. Now, I have nothing against lawyers. You're a
Yes.
lawyer, I know
Yes.
that.
Well,
But you know, these are IT issues.
Yes.
And I happen to have more than 50 years of experience
But thank you. It's nice
in
to
IT.
know basically proposals that also offer alternatives.
Yeah,
Should we
and that's what you
make
should-
it manual, part of it manual, or should we stick with the automated? And I think I'd like to give an opportunity to, this is equal time, but
Yeah, 2
this is the last
against
time that
1.
Goyo is going to be
This is like the COMELEC.
hosting here. So we'd like to give you an opportunity basically to also give your piece on what you think we should do for 2013. Do you think we can reduce the risks, the glitches with the Pcos machines, and basically how you see the 2013 elections coming up with an automated system?
Well, Karen, what's important now is people work together. The elections is very important. 2013 elections is important because it's going to be in preparation for the 2016 elections. When people see automated elections, they look at the machine, but they don't look at the procedures and the process. They don't look at the other factors that make the elections run better in the Philippines. I think you have to have a holistic view on running elections and how we can improve elections. COMELEC cannot do it alone. We have to work together with them to help each other. So we'll have better elections in 2013, 16, and so on and so forth.
Okay. Well, it's going to be definitely an exciting election. But it's good to hear also, Commissioner Lagman, your thoughts on whether we should basically go back to manual for some parts of the election. And of course, we're very curious on how current COMELEC commissioners are going to handle the 2013 elections.
Well, we're doing our best despite all of the negativity around us.
Yes.
And you know, we're dealing here with a service provider which has very low morals.
Oh no! We'll see.
You know what? Let's not
I
limit
think
it to
we
the
might have to
service
extend
providers.
our show if we
Yeah,
go
we
into
might
that.
have to extend it also to
I
other
can
people.
prove that what they did in
discuss
Congress.
that off camera after.
What they did in Congress, you know.
Thank you, Commissioner Goyo.
Thank you very much,
Thank you,
and thank you
Commissioner
very much for-
Lagman, and
thank
thank
you.
you, James. And thank you all for joining us tonight. Tune in again next week as we make this vote count. I'm Karen Jimeno, and this is Elections 2013.